Den. We're alive.
And thank you, Larry Liberty Guy. I guess we should start by saying top of the afternoon to you. Not very good with accents, but happy St. Patrick's Day to those of you who celebrate it. I am a quarter Irish myself. My mother's maiden name was Driscoll. I've got the green shirt, green over sweater on, green pants, and even green, well, I won't mention. But and the only green hat I have is my favorite team, the Green Bay Packers. So the Packers will be on the show at least for the first half. With our bottom of the hour guest, I might switch caps depending on what he does, because you have to counter these things. You know, when your guest comes on and shows you up with a cap, you got to be ready to counter. So we'll be doing that maybe a little bit later. But anyway, happy St. Patrick's Day. I've got my Guinness outside, and I'll be having a cigar with some of my family members and a few Guinnesses after dinner tonight. Fire pit will be going. Hopefully it's not too cold. Okay, today, first half of the show, we'll go through a little batting practice, some quick hits, and then I'll spend a few minutes going through the governor's budget. Not so much going through the budget line by line, but just some initial observations on the budget. I've got some initial observations on just some federal goings on. So we'll talk about that tomorrow. And then the bottom of the hour, this is really going to be big because I'm really, really curious about how this discussion will go at the bottom of the hour. We're having John Marion on. Now, John Marion is one of the most respected members of, I guess you would say, the advocacy class. John is the executive director of Common Cause Rhode Island. They're kind of sometimes liberal, sometimes moderate advocacy group that advocates for a lot of good government stuff. Sometimes we think it's bad government stuff, but that's the way it is. But he's a really good guy. But they are the ones backing, their organization, Common Cause Rhode Island, is backing these major electoral reforms in two pieces of legislation in our state. Very important to election integrity. Is it? They believe it's going to help ensure election integrity. My initial view is it's going to harm election integrity. So we're not going to have a debate per se, but we want to get John on the record. And we want to hear how he explains these various provisions that, in my view, are enshrining into law a lot of the rules changes and other arbitrary changes that created a lack of confidence by many people like me and maybe you in our elections last year. And they want to enshrine those rules and those processes into law. And they even want to take it a step further, as we'll explain. So that's going to be a really interesting discussion. Will he change my mind? Will he change your mind? I know I'm not going to change his mind. I'm not even going to try to change his mind. I'm just going to have a discussion with him, try to really understand what his position and his purpose is and explanation of what they're trying to do. This is not a debate show. We interview people. We'll challenge them with some tough questions, of course. But we're not trying to score points or win debates here. But it's going to be a really great discussion. So I hope you'll stay tuned in. Remember, if you like what we're doing here, please subscribe. If you're watching live or after the fact on YouTube, please hit that red subscribe button. We'll get our viewership up. Okay, tomorrow, again, two more big guests, two big discussions. First part of the show, we're going to have Frank Sicoccio. Frank is an attorney. And he's also head of one of the largest Second Amendment advocacy groups in the state. And there are a slew. Again, the left does not stop. They're coming after your constitutional rights. They're coming after your money. They're coming after your choices on how to live your life, whether it be energy or healthcare or even elections in this case, like we'll talk about today. They are nonstop, and they have a whole slew of bills that would chip away at Second Amendment rights. So we're going to hear from Frank Sicoccio, one of Rhode Island's most well-known Second Amendment defender. And he'll be on the show tomorrow. He'll highlight the bills that are of great concern to him. Might even be a bill or two in there that they actually like. So we'll see about that. and we'll talk to Frank. And then, of course, on Thursday afternoons, Dr. Andrew Boston will be here to talk about all things COVID. And especially we'll be focusing on just these continuing mask mandates, what he believes are the futility of them. Will be one of the topics for discussion tomorrow. So anyway, that's what we got today and tomorrow on this St. Patrick's Day. Boy, I really should have a Guinness right now, shouldn't I? Well, would that be professional to be interviewing a guest with a Guinness in hand? No, probably not. Who was the elected official get in trouble? Wasn't it somebody in Rhode Island for having a beverage, an adult beverage during a town council meeting or something? I think I saw something about that, a headline in the news. I don't see what's wrong with that. I mean, come on, you're at home. You're on a Zoom meeting. Come on. Anyway, we won't do it though today. All right, little batting practice. Let's have some quick hits. Now, as many of you know, and as we've often stated on this show, and as we will state more as this legislative session in 2021 moves forward here in Rhode Island, and as bills start to come before committees for hearings, and as bills brought up for consideration, but there are many new taxes that the left wants to impose on Rhode Islanders, many more regulations. Like we said, they just keep coming after you. But for this little segment, let's think about taxes. They want a new income tax on top earners, right? They want that. They want carbon taxes on anything that potentially creates carbon emissions. And then we have the TCI gas tax. These are the taxes the left is proposing right now. Now, we don't know where Governor McKee stands on those, but we do know that the result of these taxes make Rhode Island, if they are successful, and already it's hurting Rhode Island, but it would make Rhode Island even less hospitable place to raise a family or build a career. So keep in mind that Rhode Island wants to do even more taxes. So take a look at this this graphic here from our friend Steve Moore. I'm blanking out on the name of his group, Unleashing Capitalism or something like that. But here we look at the 7 states with the highest unemployment rates in America right now, and the 10 states with the lowest unemployment rates in America right now. And all 8, as you can see over here to the right, all 8 of these states with the highest unemployment rates are blue states run by blue governors. Run by Democrat governors. All 8 of the 10 states with the lowest unemployment rates have 8 of the 10 are red, have red governors or Republican governors. But even these other 2, Kansas is not a blue state. Kansas might have a Democrat governor, but it's largely a Republican state. And Wisconsin, while it may have a Democrat governor, it has a very strong, if not a controlling, I think it has a controlling Republican factor in the General Assembly there. So you could really say that all 10 of the lowest unemployment states in America have strong Republican, or what I would call conservative, tax approach, and all the states with the worst unemployment rates have a Democrat or liberal or progressive approach of taxation. It's not hard, folks. That's the name. The more we are free of our organization, the more we are free to keep our money, make our own choices as residents, as citizens, as business people, the more prosperous we'll be, the more job opportunities there will be. That's our name, freedom and prosperity. They go with more of one begets more of the other. But I mean, how many times have we talked on this show about migration from low tax states, or from high tax states to low tax states? And here we see why. Unemployment rate just going crazy. Now, unemployment rate much higher in these high tax liberal states. Now, so Rhode Island wants to make it worse for our state. But yet in Washington, D.C., the left wants to make it worse for our country. They want to. Yesterday, we showed you a graphic that right now, Rhode Island is the 10th of the 37, quote, free market major economies in the world. America is the 12th worst when it comes to corporate freedom, between corporate tax and income tax. Under Joe Biden's proposed plan, America would be the highest tax. And they want to get us there. And you know how the Democrats want to get us there? By the only way they can get us there and increase these taxes is by doing away with the Senate filibuster. And that's now on the table. It only needs all 50 Democrats in the Senate. Again, it's a 50-50 tie with Vice President Kamala Harris breaking any tie. But there are two Democrat senators, Joe Manchin of West Virginia and Kirsten Sinema of Arizona, who right now are saying, I'm not going to vote to end the filibuster. And while they seem pretty firm on that, there's a little massaging going on. So, well, maybe we won't end the filibuster, but let's modify it. Basically, all they're saying is let's make it so we can get these major tax increases by without one single Republican vote. And both Manchin and Sinema are apparently wavering. Okay, maybe we'll just reform the filibuster rules. Whatever it is, the Democrats, it's just amazing to me. I mean, in this state, we can argue in this state, we deserve what we get. We vote for massive majorities of Democrats, and within the Democrat party, even majorities maybe now of progressive leftists. The voters picked them. I guess you could say it's a mandate of sorts, even though I don't agree with it, even though we've proven many times over it's bad policy for this state. But this is what they campaign on. This is what we voted for. And this is what we get in Rhode Island. The worst business climate in America, and always, the first into a depression or recession and the last out. And again, that pattern's holding true now. But in America, when we elected Joe Biden, there was no talk of he didn't campaign on ending the filibuster. He did campaign on raising taxes. I have to agree with that. But he didn't campaign on, he specifically said he was against the Green New Deal. But he didn't make a big point out of saying he was going to shut down United States energy production. So this has been a real bait and switch at the federal level. This is not what Americans voted for. Joe Biden tried to position himself as a moderate. And and as we see now, he is completely controlled by the progressive left. Americans did not, by ending the filibuster, by implementing these major reforms, I can't even call them reforms. These remember the voting, we're going to talk about this later, but the voting change laws that we talked about with Hans von Spakovsky from the Heritage Foundation last week, the pro-labor giveaways they're planning, the massive welfare state that went out in the supposed COVID relief bill. This is not what Americans voted for. This is not what they campaigned on. It's a 50-50 tie. It's dead even in the Senate. But yet they are acting as if they have a mandate like Democrats feel they have in Rhode Island. And in Rhode Island, they rightfully have that mandate. They campaigned on those issues. They won massively on those issues. That is not what happened in America. So we are all, as Americans, not so much as Rhode Islanders, as Americans, we are victims, at least those of us who didn't vote for Joe Biden, even those who did, I would say. Many people who did vote for Joe Biden did not realize that they would move this far left. So I don't even know, if anybody cares about that. in the Democrat Party. They just want to move their agenda, the progressive left agenda. I call it it's a pure, I mean, it's out of the bag now. It's a socialist agenda. Is there any doubt about that? Can there be any doubt that what the Democrats in Washington are advancing is a socialist agenda? Well, we've seen it in this state for years. It's a socialist agenda in this state, and it's moving with, and it has moved. I mean, we used to think rapid speed was over 5 or 6 years. We're going to see in Washington in 5 or 6 months, with the executive orders on immigration and everything else, we're going to see a socialist policy in 5 or 6 months potentially overtake this country. It's almost unbelievable. It's stunning how it could happen that fast. And it's happening that fast with a president who won such a narrow victory, and especially in Congress, where the Senate is tied. You can't get any closer than that. And in a House of Representatives that hasn't been, what's that? What's the margin? 10 and on a 535 in the House of Representatives in Washington, with the smallest margins they've ever had. This is the irony. They are enacting the hell with minority rights, minority meaning those with fewer members, the hell with minority rights. So with the smallest advantages ever, they're going to ram through some of the biggest and most radical policies ever. It just doesn't make sense, and it's not right. If you campaign on those issues and you win massively on those issues, then you can claim you have a right to move those issues. But there was no such mandate in DC. Now, in the same way that I think Joe Biden is not able to stand up to the progressive left, I fear that our new governor, Dan McKee, similarly may not be able to stand up to Rhode Island's progressive left. And as I've mentioned many times on this show, some of the early actions he's taken are not very encouraging to me. He hasn't announced anything yet, but Miss Matos, or was it Sabrina? I can't think of her first name, from Providence, a progressive left lawmaker in the town council, the city council in Providence, is apparently going to be the next lieutenant governor. McKee appointed one of the leaders of Black Lives Matter in Rhode Island to his policy team. He's talking, he's giving all the climate alarmists all the lip service in the world about the need to address climate change. That's not none of these actions are the actions of a moderate governor. I'm quite certain Dan McKee is moderate philosophically. But politically, it appears, and we're still going to keep an open mind, but it appears that Dan McKee feels he has to appease the progressive left in order to be successful politically. He's certainly going to have a primary challenge from the left. And apparently the calculation is, well, I'm going to have to give the left a whole bunch of things if I'm going to hope to win enough votes from the progressive left in the primary to end up being the Democrat nominee. But I don't know if that's smart. The progressive left is a smaller part of the political spectrum. The larger part are the moderate independents. And then when you add in conservative Republicans, those two groups make up a much bigger. So you got moderate Democrats, you got moderate independents, and you have conservative Republicans. They make up a much bigger piece of the pie than the narrow progressive left. So while appeasing the progressive left might help him in the primary, I think it hurts him in a general election, especially when, rumors have it that Joe Paolino might be running as an independent. How is somebody who appeased the progressive left and Dan McKee going to be attractive to a moderate independent or moderate Democrat or even moderate conservative when you stack him against Joe Paolino, who is a moderate? or to a Republican alternative. So I think Dan McKee's playing with fire if he thinks that appeasing the progressive left is going to help him overall politically. I'm not, it's not my area of expertise. So then we come to the budget that Dan McKee put in last week. And, we've had meetings with our team, and I'd like to share some of our thoughts on that. First of all, Dan McKee himself referred to it as a status quo budget. Now, only the progressive left and the special interests in the state, the big unions, the lawyer lobby, and the progressive left, only they think the status quo is good. There's not too many other people that think the status quo is good in this state. Everybody knows our worst business climate. Everybody knows we're hemorrhaging people. Businesses are shutting down, not just because of the pandemic, but also because of the bad business climate. Certainly the pandemic made it worse. Our state is not running smoothly. Gina Raimondo did not improve anything in this state. She benefited from, I'm going to say it, she benefited from 4 years of Donald Trump's economy and the conservative policies at the federal level. There was no pro-business policy by Gina Raimondo, and there is no pro-business policy in the budget put forth by Dan McKee. He admitted it's a status quo budget. What we have learned, in dealing with lawmakers for the last 10 years, it's completely perverted process, completely backwards, bass-ackwards. The number one, the holy grail, the one thing that is not to be touched is the state budget. Even though it's the state budget and all the taxes, fees, and regulations to support it, that is what's dragging down our state. But the state budget is the holy grail, the thing that cannot be messed with. When have we seen major budget reforms ever in recent memory? Ever? Compared to states like New Hampshire, have just slightly bigger population, less, they're about 40% less spending than us. On a per capita basis, it's about half as much. And they're a highly prosperous state because they're attracting highly prosperous and productive people. Our policies are attracting, yes, we have a different makeup to New Hampshire. That's because our policies are attracting a different kind of people. People with their hands out. Give me something. Give me some state support. So here's just quickly going through a list of items in McKee's budget that I think are worth noting. First of all, regarding the pandemic, we got this the money on these PPP loans. I'm trying to remember, I don't remember the exact cutoff, but for many businesses who took these loans, unlike in other states, it's going to have to be reported on their income tax forms as income, taxable income. So you get a loan to help you recover, and then we're going to tax your ass on it. Other states aren't doing that. Dan McKee is doing that. Like Larry the Liberty guy said in our staff meeting, beach fees come in and out like the tide. They rise and fall like the tide in Rhode Island. Well, apparently beach fees are going up, parking fees again under Dan McKee. We've got reportedly $1.9 billion coming to our state in federal aid. And yet they're going to nickel and dime people enjoying the natural beauty of our state, the natural beauty, our beaches and parks and other outdoor areas that should be free for everybody. And on top of that, now Dan McKee supporting, again, what Larry Liberty guy called reefer madness, supporting legalization of recreational marijuana? Not because he thinks it's a good idea, but they want the money. It's a money grab. You know, marijuana, you can argue whether it makes sense or not, but what doesn't make sense, legalization, what doesn't make sense is a government-run marijuana industry. If we're going to have legalized marijuana, it should be run in the private sector, just like liquor is. You have liquor stores, and they sell you what they want. Sure, there's taxes paid and all that, but it's not government run. When it's government run, it's corrupt and it's inefficient. The insiders are going to get all the deals. And the government likes that because those insiders are going to donate to their campaign funds. There was not one item in Dan McKee's budget that would improve the overall business climate in this state. For years, he has been a vocal advocate for the small business community. It's time for Dan McKee to be a legislative advocate. Put something in here somewhere that will actually help the small business community. You know what in his bill, he does continue all the corporate handouts, the crony socialism handouts. In fact, he's expanding all those corporate handouts that we were so critical of Gina Raimondo on. He's keeping and expanding all of those corporate handouts. That's not improving the state's business climate. That's creating an uneven playing field. That's giving only a handful, few dozen businesses some grant money, which gives them a competitive advantage over other businesses in their industry or their field. It's not sustainable. This idea that government money is the answer is where we completely disagree. Freedom is what leads to prosperity. Lower taxes, lower regulations, more rights to make our own decisions how to live our lives, and run our businesses. The left wants to give all benefits and advantages to the worker at the expense of the employer. Minimum wage, equal pay mandates, paid leave time. In order to be prosperous, in order to have more and better paying jobs, we need more and better companies. We need to be recruiting companies. That should be the focus. Job producing employers, investors who will invest in those companies. But instead, we're driving them away. And there's nothing in Dan McKee's budget that's going to pull any of them back. They're talking about a first ever property tax, statewide property tax of sorts. Gina Raimondo tried to get through a sales tax on high-end homes on transactions when they're sold. Dan McKee wants to make that even higher. It's technically a sales tax, but it's on property. And I'm going to call it the first ever, in this state, statewide property tax. We don't need more. We just showed you the graphic. More taxes leads to more unemployment and less prosperity. These corporate handouts we talked about a few minutes ago do nothing but help the public and private sector unions. Everything in this bill is designed to help the special interests. None of it is designed to help the small businesses. Nothing in there. I would go so far as to say in this budget, this status quo budget that Dan McKee called it, that he has betrayed his words over the past few years to the small business community. Now, he hasn't, the story's not over. I'm just looking at this one little, well, budget's not little, but when it's however many, 10 point or 11, 12 trillion, billion. So there's more to go. He hasn't taken a formal position yet that I know of on minimum wage, rushing it up to $15. He hasn't taken a position on the income tax that I've seen, although he says he's not for more taxes, but it was a weak comment. He hasn't said whether he's going to support or oppose the TCI gas tax plan. Those are all very important issues to the small business community. And those admittedly are larger than any issues in or not in this budget. But this budget also continues the giveaways, the free tuition, just free stuff. Free stuff does not lead to prosperity, folks. So the question for Dan McKee, and we're going to stay on this, is whether he's going to keep going with the progressive left trend, the go along to get along. Let's not cause any political ruffles. Let me try to appease everybody except for small businesses and conservatives. Or is he going to be the small business advocate he's talked such a big game on for the past few years? And he's going to say, no, progressive left, we're going to start improving the business climate in this state. No to all these mandates and taxes that are on the table right now. And here are some new ideas I have to improve. We will see. I'm not encouraged by what I see in the current budget. I'm not encouraged by what I've seen by Dan McKee's initial actions, although I am encouraged by one thing, and then we're going to get to our guest. He did today hire Lincoln Town Administrator Joseph Allman, who, I don't know Mr. Allman, but by all accounts, he's a relatively conservative guy, and he runs the town of Lincoln in a relatively conservative way. He was the town manager. Here's the Valley Breeze story on that. So apparently he's going to be a deputy chief of staff to Mayor McKee. That's the one good sign I've seen. So we'll see if we can build on that. All right, on to our main topic today, and we welcome our guest, John. I haven't seen you in a long time, but John Marion of Common Cause, Rhode Island. Welcome to In the Dugout.
Thanks, Mike. I haven't seen anybody in a long time. So,
all right, I see you're right into playing the game right away. What hat you got on for me?
Yeah, so I promised you a minor league baseball hat, but I'm actually moving in a couple of weeks, and my Pawtucket Hot Wieners hat, because I went to the novelty night when they changed their jerseys to the Hot Wieners, is in a box that I can't find. So this is from my alma mater. So I'm from New York.
A little closer to the camera. I can't see it.
Yeah, so
there it is. Oh, Binghamton. Yeah, there's a great minor league team there, right?
There
was.
Yeah, they still are. So the Mets AA affiliate, which used to be the Binghamton Mets, is now, I think they're called the Binghamton, there's something Ponies. They held a contest to name the team, and they renamed them from the Binghamton Mets. But that's where Tim Tebow has spent about the last 4 years of his life.
He just retired, I saw, right?
Yeah, but I figured it's green, so it's good for today.
All right, well, I've been wearing green, and I got my Green Bay Packers, so I'm going to counter, and I am going to go with my Paw Sox hat now.
Yeah.
So I'll go with my Paw Sox cap just to counter you. So,
well, they had a novelty night where they renamed them the Pawtucket Hot Wieners, and they have a hat, and it's a hot dog, or it's a dog running with the hot sauce and the onions on top, and that's my favorite hat. But
so where are you moving to?
Find it. I'm just moving in Rhode Island. I'm just one house to another. So, but if
I thought you okay.
So we can double.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us. And
yeah, of course.
All right. So Common Cause Rhode Island, just quickly for our viewers, just 30 seconds.
Yep.
Tell us what's Common Cause. I know you're part of a larger national organization, but go ahead.
Yep. So I run the Rhode Island office of the national organization Common Cause. We've been here both locally and nationally 51 years. Started by a guy named John Gardner back in 1970, who was a Republican, but he was in LBJ's cabinet, and he resigned from the cabinet in protest to the Vietnam War. And he started Common Cause, and he called it the People's Lobby. And he said, everybody in Washington has a lobby except for citizens who care about democracy. And so he started us, and really in the 70s, the campaign finance laws and then the transparency laws, right? It was the 70s that we saw the first public records laws and open meetings laws. We were involved both locally and nationally. So locally, we were founded by a woman named Natalie Jocelyn, but Lila Sappensley, who you probably remember, was one of the first dozen members of Common Cause. When she was in the Senate in Rhode Island, she was behind a lot of the open government laws in the late 70s.
And you guys are exclusively focused on good government stuff?
So, yeah, however you define that.
Right.
So, in Rhode Island, that kind of took a funny turn. So, most of the country, it's voting rights, elections, campaign finance. In Rhode Island, we do three other things that we don't do as much in other states. One is ethics. So since 86 and creating the Ethics Commission. The second is judicial selection. So we were very involved in '94 when we went to the merit selection of judges.
You have legal staff, legal lawyers on your staff?
In DC, but not locally, but we
Okay.
get volunteer attorneys from time to time. And then the third is the one that really makes us stick out, which is separation of powers. So starting in '94, when Phil West was leading the organization, till 2004, we fought that fight for separation of powers. And it's not in the headlines anymore, but I testified on 3 bills last week on separation of powers. It's still the legislature.
Well, let's have another discussion on that, because we did not see separation of powers during this pandemic. I don't know if you agree with me, but it was not a well-balanced form of government, even though state law allows for that.
Yep.
But I think state law needs to be changed. So let's come back to that another time. Let's get to the election integrity issues at hand. All right. So your group is one of many that's leading the way on a campaign called Let Rhode Island Vote. Let RI Vote, to be official. It's caused quite a bit of news, quite a bit of a reaction, good and bad, right and left, Republican and Democrat. But why don't you tell me, what is the purpose, before we get into any of the specifics, what is the purpose? What is the problem that you see that these two pieces of legislation that we'll talk about shortly are seeking to address?
Sure. So the problem in the long term is that Rhode Island voting, how Rhode Islanders vote has been fairly static for a long time, meaning our system was set up for virtually every voter to vote in a polling place on election day. And what we've seen in the last 30 years is that in most of the United States, we've moved away from that model. So in the vast majority of states, we've moved to a model of some people vote on election day, some people vote early in person, and some people vote early by mail. Some states have gone all the way to vote by mail. As you probably know, there's 6
But
states.
it's okay for states to be different. So what's been the problem?
So the problem is, from our perspective, voters are locked into a system that tells them they have to vote in person on election day, but they've demonstrated that they want a choice of how to vote. Some want to vote by mail, some want to vote early in person, and some want to vote on election day. So we need to reset our system to give them that choice, because our system is set up for voters to vote on election day in a polling place.
So, all right. So we're gonna. Would you agree with this? I don't know, axiom. Election laws, rules should make it easy to vote but hard to cheat. Would you agree with that?
I wouldn't use the word easy. I would say,
Isn't that what we're trying to do here? Make it so easy to vote that you're almost forced to vote?
no. We're talking, I would use the word convenient, right? So, and I think there's a
But do
distinction
you generally disagree? Easy to vote but hard to cheat. And easy, you don't have to be too literal with it. Want to make it convenient to vote but hard to cheat. How's that then?
Yeah, we want elections that are both fair and secure, right?
Okay.
I mean, you can choose your terms, but
Okay.
yes.
All right,
Yep.
so let's keep that in mind as we look through these provisions. Are we making it easier or more convenient to vote, or are we making it less secure or harder to cheat, or not? So let's just keep that in mind as we go through all this. We've got a lot to cover, so I want to get right into some details if that's okay. So first of all, this legislation, now Common Cause is a national group. Is this model legislation that Common Cause is pushing in other states, or is this something that was specifically designed for Rhode Island?
So no, we wrote this from scratch for Rhode Island. So
Okay.
really, each state we work in works on state-specific legislation. So for instance, Colorado back about a decade ago moved to what I would call mail ballot first, right? So every voter gets a mail ballot. They can vote it, or they can go in person on election day and vote in person. But like, mail is the first choice. Common Cause Colorado, or Colorado Common Cause, I think they put the state.
But do we
name
have to give
first.
into that choice if it's
No,
a
so
less
they
secure choice?
so they chose for their state. They thought that was the right model for Colorado. We think the right model for Rhode Island is 3 equal choices, right? So in-person election day, in-person
Okay,
early,
got it.
or mail, all on equal footing. It's up to the voter which
All
one
right.
they want to do.
Fair enough. Now, who are the lead sponsors of the 2 bills? We'll get into the specific bills later, but who are the people that are leading the charge in the General Assembly?
Well, so there's 4 bills, right? So there's 2 proposals. There's a big bill, right, which is most of what we're going to talk about.
Yep.
And that makes a variety of changes to Title 17, which is the state election laws. In the Senate, that's Dawn Oyer of Newport. And in the House, it's Whip Katie Kazarian of East Providence.
Okay.
There's a resolution to put a constitutional amendment on the ballot for the voters to decide. In the House, that's Katie Kazarian again, but in the Senate, it's Senator Alana DiMario.
Okay, we'll get to that. We'll get to that second bill at the end.
Yep.
All right. So the excuse we heard now, you were part of, I think, were you guys part of the lawsuit last year?
We were a plaintiff along with the
Yep.
League of Women Voters and 3 individuals. Yes.
Yep. So we were very critical of that whole process. And you tell me where I've got it wrong, okay? So from my point of view, I saw what I would call, I don't know if I would throw you in there, but I would say we had left-wing advocacy groups and plaintiffs conspiring with a left-wing Board of Elections and Secretary of State to weaken the voter laws based on the pandemic. That was the excuse. And when the General Assembly did not pass that, our elected officials, we went to the courts, and you've got a friend suing a friend, and they reach an out-of-court settlement, and presto magic, somehow, without any due process, yes, a judge approved it, we changed our election laws. What do I have wrong in that narrative?
Well, I'd say a couple of things, right? So, I mean, we sued them. Like, it was not friendly.
But they were on your side. They wanted the same thing.
They settled it in a consent decree, but they negotiated it, and
but you wanted the same thing. You wanted the same outcome.
We settled on.
So wasn't a lawsuit? I mean, wasn't it just a bait and switch?
No. I mean, they didn't know the lawsuit was coming. We felt that people's First and 14th Amendment rights to vote were going to be violated if something wasn't done about the witness notary requirement in the pandemic. And so we sued the public officials who could do something about it, right? The Secretary of State and the Board of Elections. They entered a consent decree with us. They didn't fight the merits of the suit. They entered a consent decree. The district judge entered the consent decree. the First Circuit
Yep.
accepted the consent decree, and then the U.S. Supreme Court,
Yep.
including, we think, Kavanaugh and Roberts, accepted the consent decree. It's on what they call the shadow
Only
docket.
based on a technicality, because technically nobody in government joined to oppose it. But we all know, but don't we know that it's constitutional? Only legislatures can change election laws, and we bypassed through a trick, friends suing friends and agreeing on a settlement, and the courts, yes, the courts upheld it, which we disagree with, but technically that was unconstitutional.
It's axiomatically
courts can't change
wrong.
Election laws.
Yes, they can. Right.
No, they can't.
So they can if they find
they're not supposed to. Let's put it that way.
No, if like, let's set aside elections. If the courts think that any public policy violates the Constitution of the United States, they can declare that public policy to be null and void and unconstitutional in violation of the Constitution of the United States.
What did the court declare null and void about Rhode Island's laws?
The court accepted the consent decree and the rationale that the state needed to enter the consent decree because the witness notary requirement during a pandemic would violate the First and 14th Amendment right of Rhode Island voters.
During a pandemic?
Yes.
So why now? We're not going to have a pandemic next election. So why are we going to change it now?
Because I would say there's 2 to 3 reasons. One is we just went through 4 elections without it and proved essentially that we don't need it, right? Those were well-run elections. There have been no allegations that anything went wrong with any of the last 4 elections. 2, I would submit we shouldn't have had it in the first place.
Well, I'm going to give you some information on that in a minute, but anyway, go ahead.
But the witness notary requirement, 2 witness notary requirement, it should say 2 witness or notary requirement, is something that only a couple of states have, right? We're talking Alabama, North Carolina, just a couple of states have. The vast majority of states don't require this. And I actually believe that it is a source of problems in our elections, not a solution to any problems, because it incentivizes political campaigns to send operatives out to collect mail ballots.
Now we're going to get into that later.
And to witness or notarize them. If you don't have that, which the vast majority of states don't, including those all mail states like Utah and Colorado that don't have these requirements, there's no reason for the voter to ever have to interact with a campaign operative. And so the cases we've seen recently where there have been problems, notably North Carolina District 8 in 2018, where the State Board of Elections would not certify the result because of actual election fraud. It was a notary public employed by the Republican candidate who was,
there's potential for fraud or underhanded stuff everywhere. We know that.
So if you don't, if the voter doesn't need,
all right, we're going to talk about, so signatures remain the only validity. We're going to talk about that in a minute. All right, you're not going to like this, but we're going to do some batting practice. All right, I'm going to toss it to you. You're going to take a quick swipe at it. I'm going to toss the next one. So basically I've got 10 or 12 what should be just yes or no answers. Then we'll come back and review some of them because I want everyone to understand the scope of this bill. All right. Does this bill keep voter identification?
Yeah, it doesn't do anything about voter identification. It doesn't change.
You still have to show up and show an ID when you vote.
Correct.
Okay. Does it allow same-day registration and vote?
That's the other bill you wanted to talk about later.
Yeah, I'm talking about all these bills.
The package. Yeah, the package doesn't create same day, but it changes the Constitution to let the legislature, if it chooses to enact same day.
It would let the legislature do it.
Yes. Right now, the Constitution.
It's not in the bill now.
Right now, the Constitution forbids the legislature from passing same day, but we want to remove
same day registration.
Correct.
And voting. You can register and vote all in one swoop.
Yeah, you prove your residency and then you can register.
It
and vote.
enshrines early voting, yes or no?
Yeah, yes, including a weekend.
Does it expand automatic registration like we have with motor voter, like to other departments, human services, prisons, other government agencies?
This doesn't touch on automatic voter
All right,
registration.
does it allow felons to vote?
Well,
in our state?
felons can vote in our state. In 2006, we amended
Okay.
the state constitution.
So it doesn't change that.
No, nothing about that.
Okay. Does it allow for online voter registration?
We already allow that.
Okay. Does it allow for online mail ballot applications?
Yes, it would use the online voter registration portal to allow you to also request a mail ballot application.
And that would be new, or did we do that this past year?
That would be new.
Okay.
And that's because last year we sent paper applications, but
Yep.
that costs $500,000 every
Yep.
time we do that. And this would be just
All right.
updating the system.
Does it allow for online voting itself?
No. We oppose that vehemently.
Does it reduce minimum residency time before you can become a legal registered voter?
No.
It doesn't reduce minimum residency in the state?
No. So the state constitution sets 30 days minimum residency. This would delete that reference and allow the General Assembly to establish the residency. We're not proposing getting rid of the 30
right.
days. We just
All
want to
right.
give the General Assembly the ability to set it.
Does it prevent in any way the Secretary of State to clean the voter rolls of suspected ineligible voters?
It requires her to do it more often. So it requires that they be.
Yeah, but does it allow to
It,
do it more open? But does it restrict her in that frequency?
no, it actually makes her do more. So
All right.
it would require them to do it 4 times a year, when right now they're not required to do it 4 times a year.
Does it maintain bipartisan review of mail ballots?
It would actually, so it would create bipartisan review of mail ballots. Right now,
Because the provision I'm looking at says 2 people not affiliated with the same party. That doesn't necessarily mean Republican. That could be an independent and a Democrat. So is that really bipartisan?
well, considering that the plurality of voters in the state aren't affiliated with the party,
Yeah, I'm talking about officials being there to oversee the ballot. So this does not guarantee that the Republican can be in that room, does it?
it doesn't. No, you're
Okay,
right.
all right, let's move
Yep,
on. I
yep.
just want to be clear. It actually allows for some monkey business there. Okay.
I would disagree.
So we talk, it eliminates legally the mail ballot validation by 2 witnesses or a notary, correct?
Correct.
Eliminates that. Does it in any way extend the period for which mail ballots can be received after election day?
If they have a postmark by election day, they can be received up to 7 days after the election. And if they're qualified, validated, they can be counted.
And that's a change in the law?
Yeah, right now, unless you're military or overseas, so military ballots, even without a postmark, military ballots can come in up to, and overseas can come in up to 7 days after and be counted. This would extend that to everybody, but it would require the postmark.
Does this bill have, or do these package of bills have any kind of fiscal note? How much this is going to cost for all this extra mail ballots coming in, people to adjudicate them, people to process them, check signatures? Is there any fiscal note on how you talked earlier about the extra cost of mailing ballots, but has anyone considered the cost of all this administration of
So
paper ballots?
I'd say 2 points. One, I've been in this job for 13 years and I haven't gotten a fiscal note yet. The General Assembly, honestly, just, doesn't do many
Yeah.
fiscal notes, right?
Not too well, do they?
They don't do them at all, like most legislatures. In the long run, I firmly believe, and the evidence bears out from other states, that this would be cheaper. There's going to be a transition period where it probably costs more, but
but there's no specific estimate of how much this is. Okay.
No.
We're just going to eat it. All right. Does it in any way restrict or outlaw ballot harvesting?
It doesn't put any, it doesn't make any changes to,
Rhode Island is silent on it right now,
yeah, it
but we
doesn't.
remain silent on it.
It-
So
we
it's
remain-
basically allowed, even though it's not technically legal, it's allowed, right?
You're right. It doesn't change anything, but I would submit that the people who have historically done any funny business are those witnesses or the notaries.
Yep. All right. Does this package of bills allow for any third-party drop boxes or only those designated and managed by the Board of Elections?
Yeah, so it has to be Board of Elections drop boxes, and they have to have.
Because in other
sturdy-
states, anybody can set up a drop box.
Yeah, no. These,
I mean,
so,
if it's ballot harvesting, why couldn't somebody set up a drop box?
yeah, so the
ballot
drop
harvest?
boxes, so right now there's 41 drop boxes in the state. There's outside 39 cities and town halls, except for Central Falls and East Greenwich, where they're outside the police station. And then there's an extra one at the secretary's office and at the board.
But it would
election.
forbid anybody else from setting up a box to collect. I mean, if ballot harvesting, couldn't I just say, hey, here's my box. Instead of me coming to your door, drop it off here.
I
Does it
wouldn't,
forbid me from doing that?
it wouldn't forbid some guy with a paper box from putting a sticker on it that says drop box, because I didn't think of that. But the only drop boxes are Board of Elections drop boxes, and they have to go pick them up from those drop boxes
Yeah, all
under
right.
this bill.
All right. Then I saw something in there, and then this is the last quick hit. Well,
Yeah.
let's get into more discussion. I saw something in there about eliminating the folded mail ballots. What was that about?
Yeah, so I wish I had an example of this, right? So if you voted by mail, when you get your mail ballot, you get 3 envelopes, right? So you get the envelope that the other 2 envelopes come in. So I'm just gonna use paper to demonstrate this.
That's all right.
And then you get what's called an outer envelope, which has the return address of the Board of Elections on it. And then you get what's called the inner envelope or the oath envelope. That's what you stick your ballot in,
Yeah.
you seal it and you sign it.
But it normally would have to be folded, right?
Yeah, the ballot has to be folded because it's not a big envelope. And then you put that in the outer envelope and then you send that to the Board of
Right.
Elections.
Right.
Under this bill, you would get 1 envelope. It would have the Board of Elections return address on the outside. On the flap, it would create a big, huge flap. On the flap, that's where you would sign it. And then you would seal it like this. And this does,
But I'm talking about the ballot itself. Would it still have to be folded to go into the envelope?
yeah, I'm not aware of anybody in America who
Because
doesn't.
obviously, that was one of the issues.
Fold.
That a lot of ballots were counted in other states that were unfolded. And they were so how do you have an unfolded mail ballot, right? It has to be folded, go in an envelope.
Yeah, they have to fold to go in the envelope.
But
Nobody
there's
sends a
something
big-
there's something in this bill that says something about not requiring a fold.
No, what it doesn't require is the 2 envelopes. It says that
All
the-
right, I'll recheck it. I'll
Yep.
trust you on that. All right. Here's the thing. So online ballot application.
Yep.
How do you validate that the person filling out the application is, we all know there are
Yeah,
senile
so-
seniors and other people who really don't have the capacity to vote or do anything. How do you know it's not that person's daughter trying to get an extra vote for their candidate? Is there any provision to protect against that?
Yeah, so we're using, as I said earlier, you're using the online voter registration portal, and online voter registration is synced to the DMV database. So you have to enter your driver's license number or your state ID number if you have a non-driver state ID.
If I'm the senior's son, I have that information. I could be filling out the application for my deranged dad, right?
You could, and then
All I'm asking, is there any way to guard against that? If somebody was so inclined to cheat like that?
Not unless you create a computer system that like does an iris scan or
Oh, all
something.
right. So,
But
so in this
yeah.
regard, we've made it easier to apply for a ballot, but we've also made it easier to cheat, right? For someone.
No, I would say so.
Well, why not?
Because the son or daughter could fill out a paper application right now. Right?
True. Well, true. Yeah. By
So-
mailing one to the house, I could intercept it and send it back on behalf.
Or-
Again, I'm just assuming
or
my
you
dad
can-
is not. My
but you
dad is
can-
not deranged, by the way. But I'm
but you
just
can-
making a point.
You can print it out online. It's a PDF. So you can
Right, but-
print out the application
Yep.
online, forge it, therefore committing a felony and
Yep.
risking imprisonment of up to 5 years, send it in, right?
So you just
but-
admitted that whether it's paper or online, it's an insecure process. You just admitted it.
No.
Yes, you
It's-
did.
No, I mean, you could also go to the DMV and pretend to be somebody else. Again,
Well, yeah.
you're risking a felony.
Well, yeah,
It's not-
but,
it's
but
not
there
by
is no real
definition-
security
right,
check to that,
It's
right?
not by definition insecure if you're
So our
risking a
argument is
felony.
this whole mail ballot process is completely insecure, whether it's online or mailed. And you would say what?
That's hogwash. I'd say it's hogwash because there are multiple checks, right? When you submit an application, there's a check, as I admitted. On the online, the check is the state ID or driver's license number, and they've got to match it up to your DMV record. The check on the mail ballot. So say you get sent a mail ballot, then you have to sign it, and then there's the signature match, and there's the pair, as we talked about earlier, of election judges who have to compare the signatures, and then only then does it get qualified and counted. And so there's
And that's the
multiple
theory. I
checks.
get it. And I don't mean we're running short on time, so
Yep.
I want to show you this. So just Justin Katz from our
I
organization.
know, Justin. Yep.
So Justin did a little research. I don't know if you can see the screen.
Yeah, I can see it.
So I haven't seen this. So in 2018, you can see here there were just over 27,000 mail ballots submitted. 775 were rejected for whatever reason. 2.85% rejection rate. In 2020, there were 6 times more ballots submitted, but there were also 6 times fewer rejected, a 0.08 rejection rate. How can any concerned citizen who's concerned about election integrity and the security of these mail ballots and the validity see something like this and think that, man, they're just letting anything through from anybody? How would you explain these kinds of numbers?
So I'd say
These are actual numbers from the Secretary of State's office.
Yep, I don't doubt them. There's 2 things to know there. One is that tracks what we saw across the United States, which was during the pandemic, there was a lot of news about mail ballots, and people started reading the instructions and doing it right? So especially as they got to, right? So November was the 3rd election in Rhode Island during the pandemic. So people who voted by mail, many of them who voted in November by mail had already voted twice by mail earlier in the year. And the rejection rates got lower and lower because people were following the instructions better because they had voted by mail more often. And we saw that in all the states. The rejection rates went down because voters did a better job of not making mistakes. I actually have those numbers broken out by.
So you're saying it's better education of voters because of all the publicity about it.
Yep, and I have.
It's going to lead to a 36-time lower rejection rate.
And then the other thing that
Does
happened.
that really pass the smell test?
Yep, the Board of Elections, back when it was 27,000 mail ballots, they had kind of a mom and pop operation for how they looked at those. They scaled that. So like no person who doesn't work for the Board of Elections spends more time in that building than me. And they scaled that dramatically. So they got these teams and they trained them, and they actually hired a consultant who used to be an FBI handwriting forensics guy to do a seminar to train these people. Prior to that, the signature folks weren't trained.
How much training, John?
An hour's training, but that's an hour's more training than
An hour makes you a signature expert?
It's an hour more of an expert than they have ever been.
And you feel that's secure.
We're working toward a far better system. And then the third thing is, in 2018, that was actually the first year Rhode Island instituted something that this bill would require, which is called the mail ballot cure process. So if your signature is rejected, you get a letter.
Yep.
And you have 7 days to sign an affidavit.
How do we ensure that's done fairly? Well, envelopes, I see in the bill, envelopes have some kind of unique voter ID. And if somebody cracks that code, I mean, do we really trust that Rhode Island's going to maintain secure database? And so if somebody cracks that code, they could probably figure out who the Republican and Democrat voters are. And if they wanted to, we'll only cure the ballots we like and we'll leave the other ones. How do we ensure that?
Yeah, because nobody can see the ballot when they're looking at
No, but the
signature.
envelope has a unique voter ID on it, according to the bill.
Yeah, as it did.
Apparently it's supposed to be secure, but what if it's not? Why would we put a unique voter ID on a ballot envelope?
On the envelope, because that allows the voter to track it. So in 2020, you could go online. This is actually a security practice. You could see where in the mail stream.
But it also allows someone who's devious to track it. When I'm standing there in person and I put my machine in the feeder and it gets counted,
tabulator.
Nobody can screw with my ballot. If election officials can track my ballot, so can a devious person, right?
Conceivably, somebody could figure out what that barcode is.
Yep.
And reverse engineer.
Or if they got access to the database, if it got hacked or something, right? All right.
Yeah.
Anyway, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Two more quick things. Do you have 2 more minutes, John?
Yeah,
I know.
I do.
Thank you for putting up with me. But
listen, we're going to disagree on a lot of this, but I'm going to talk to you. Like, I'm not.
I know
hide.
it's great. That's why I knew you'd be a great guest, even for me. All right. Why are we doing this? Why? What is this all about? Changing these voter certification section of the law. Oops, what'd I do with it? Did I just? Oh, here it is.
Yep.
To the point where people no longer say they're eligible to cast a mail ballot, no longer saying they have to be qualified to vote elsewhere. You can see these sections.
Yeah.
Read it out. Why would we do that?
Yeah. So because Rhode Island, every time you look at a 50-state chart, Rhode Island has an asterisk next to it. and one of the asterisks is that the vast majority of states are what we call no excuse absentee ballot states. And Rhode Island is a no excuse absentee ballot state with an asterisk. It's the only one in the country. Line 7 is the asterisk. So right now you have to provide an excuse to vote a mail ballot, but the excuse is I may not be able to be at my polling place on election day. So it's called box 4. Everybody checks box 4, right? So it's an excuse, but it's not really an excuse. So let's just end the charade of having an excuse. We have an excuse, but we don't enforce the excuse. Nobody comes to your door and interrogates you and says, you checked box 4, Mr. Stenhouse. Are you really going to not be at your polling place on election day? No, nobody. So let's end the charade. Let's be like the vast majority of states.
All right, here's another charade we should end then. All right, I'll accept that. But if there's 20 days guaranteed of early voting, why should we accept that anybody can't make it to the poll? You just said on election day, but when there's 20 days of election days, why do we accept that people can't get to a place? If they're physically disabled, then give us the reason why. But why do we not even ask that question anymore when there's 20 days of early voting and for 99% of Rhode Islanders, they should be able to get to a polling place on one of those 20 days. So it doesn't make sense. It just doesn't make sense that we're doing so many excuses for mail ballots when there's what we just admitted had holes in it in many ways. When you could just, with 20 days of early voting, you could do the most secure thing possible. Fill up my ballot and put it in the machine. There's no tampering, no risk of getting it denied. When there's 20 days of early voting, why are we pushing mail balloting so much?
Well, I'm not going to accept the premise that we demonstrated that
We
you
did.
can fudge the system. We're going to disagree. But again, I think there are folks who demonstrated that they like to vote by mail. And I would say, here's a great benefit, right? So did you vote in the March 2nd election on the bonds?
Yes, I did.
Yeah, I did too. Did you read every word on every bond?
Before I went there. Well, not every word, but
Yeah, I mean, but we're hyper political human beings, the two of us. Most people are not hyper political human beings, but they say they wanted to vote on the bonds. Are you going to stand there in the polling place and read every word of
but
that?
I get a voter handbook. The state, I don't have it with me. The state sends out a voter handbook. I have every opportunity. I can go online to read it. Come on, John. Do we really think that most Rhode Islanders can't get to a poll in a 20-day window?
I would submit there are a portion of the population who deserve to have the choice to vote at their kitchen table because they want to take their time, read the ballot, consider their choices, and mail it in or drop it in the Dropbox.
All right, two more. One specific provision in there was about same-day rate. While this bill does not make it happen, it enables it to happen. Again, think of the potential deviousness there. I mean, what would stop somebody taking some from out of state, walking into a Rhode Island, say, I want to register and vote, use some false name, show some maybe, I don't even know if they have to show anything, an electric bill that's not theirs. And now they've cast a legal vote in our state, or a legal voter in our state walking down. He knows he's going to be leaving the state next month, walking down to another poll place and registering the same day using a different name. What security stops that?
So the second point. So just so everybody knows, Rhode Island has what are called electronic poll books now, which are networked.
Yeah.
So if I walk into polling place A and say I want to vote here.
Yep. So it's instantaneously updated. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah. Yep. So that
But
technology.
I go to another place using a different name. I take the electric bill of my neighbor who I know isn't registered, and I pretend I'm him.
Yeah. So statutorily, what they're going to do is put in place requirements to demonstrate residency. 21 states, Idaho, like not states that are like left coast states, have had same-day registration for decades without problems. Again, Rhode Island, asterisk state, we have same-day registration.
Okay.
Presidential
You're saying it doesn't make it easy to cheat to do that?
No, there's no demonstrated problems.
All right, here's my final question, the big question to you, John. This is ultimately what it's all about. You're aware, you're a very plugged in guy, locally, nationally. You're aware of the concerns, especially nationally, somewhat locally, with the big mail ballot dumps coming in the middle of the night by many candidates who lost, who are well ahead after all the in-person voting early and actual. You're aware that many Rhode Islanders, half of Americans, according to poll, maybe even more than half Americans, are really suspect about the whole mail ballot process. You're aware that that's true, right?
I'm aware that people's trust in our election processes aren't really high right now.
Right. And especially so after last year. And again, a lot of it was politicized. I get that. But and it's very emotional. I mean, it's our sacred right to vote, to elect our people. And so knowing that these very provisions that you're pushing or let me use a better word, advocating for, you're an honest man. There's no doubt about that. But when you know that implementing these provisions are only going to exacerbate the lack of trust in our elections in Rhode Island, why would you do it? You might have all the explanations, but you know, people aren't going to listen to the explanation. Half of the populace, I'm maybe not half, but a large piece of the populace in this state are going to just throw up their hands and say, it's just, how can I ever have faith again? Why? You're a good guy. You're a lot of people are good people. Why would you do that?
Because I would say, first of all, again, I just want to make clear, I don't accept the premise of the urban myths about the mail ballot dumps, right? Like,
There might have been legitimate mail ballot dumps, but it looked fishy, right? When all of a sudden at 3 a.m, elections flip, right? That just looks.
But
fishy,
there's
right?
administrative explanations for what happened, right?
Yes, there are. Yes, there are, and probably legitimate ones.
So I would say this: people sort of say, like, why is Common Cause? We think of Common Cause as this accountability group. Why are you doing this? In a democracy, accountability starts at the ballot box. If we don't like our elected officials, we get to vote them out. That's where we hold them accountable. And if we don't let you get to the ballot box, you can't hold public officials accountable.
But if we don't have trust in that ballot process, that's not good either, right?
The reason I'm standing behind a proposal that is soup to nuts, it's the whole thing. We're trying to change everything, not just little bits. We don't want to just get rid of the witness notary requirement. We want to put in a new signature match requirement, right? We're not just saying, let's cherry pick the pieces that we, make it more convenient for voters.
But we're going to have Ken Block on next week. He was away this week, and Ken has studied this a lot. You know that. And he has proven that you can register and vote via mail without ever showing an ID, without ever proving who you are. And the signature match, if the signature match upon registration was invalid, then it's invalid on a mail ballot as well. So he's proven that.
So I'll debate Ken when the time comes to debate Ken. But just to finish my point, I think in a democracy, you hold your elected leaders accountable at the ballot box, and that we need to let people vote. And what we proposed is a system that we think both increases access and increases security and safety at the same time. We didn't just say, let's have, more mail voting or allow more mail voting. We said, but you know what? You got to clean the voter rolls more regularly, right? We didn't just say, let's have more drop boxes. We said, we have to have more drop boxes with security cameras on them, right? We didn't ignore the folks who don't trust the system. We actually tried to incorporate some of the better ideas out there for how to put security in the system. We didn't ignore the Buddy Cianci campaign issue, right? There's a reason Buddy had 2 guys going to the senior citizens high rises, because you needed 2 witnesses, right? So we're trying to put Ed Catunia out of business, right? Like, we don't want that stuff.
The professional mail ballot guy, yeah.
He's a
ballot harvester guy, yeah.
He's a notary public,
yep.
Right? That's how he knock. I'm here to notarize your ballot. It doesn't count as not notarized. The voter can say, take off, Ed. I don't need you to notarize my ballot. You're not going near it.
John Marion, you're a good sport. I'm a skeptic on this, but we had a really good debate back and forth. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
I don't think I can wish you luck on these bills, but I wish you luck personally.
Don't wish me bad luck. So.
I'm not going to do that either.
And we should talk about separation of powers sometime.
Yeah, let's do that, because we actually are done some research on it, John. We actually have some model legislation that we just got developed. I know it's a little late, so maybe we can talk about. Let me talk to you offline on that. Okay.
Sounds good.
John, thank you for your time today and for explaining your point of view. Appreciate it.
Bye, Mike.
Good day, John. All right, we went a little long. It's an important topic, folks. Very important topic. And I thank John Marion. Disagree strongly with what we're trying to do, but it's important that you hear the point of view from the other side. So for In the Dugout, Mike Stenhouse, we'll see you tomorrow. It's big Second Amendment discussion with Frank Sicoscio in the first half hour, and then Dr.